The stars lit up again, with fire, smoke, and steel. Hunter ships swarmed forward like a black wave. Their bodies were sharp, like blades in the dark. They moved in perfect silence, forming a deadly ring around the damaged Velari fleet. Inside her ship, Captain Illyra stood tall. "The cannon is offline again," her crew reported. "And our engines?" she asked. "Dead. We can't run." She nodded slowly. "Then we don't run." She turned toward the screen, watching the hunters move in. Her voice was calm but strong. "We fight." Somewhere deeper in the battlefield, Wraith's ship floated, smoke rising from its side. One engine flickered, barely alive. His controls sparked with static. His left arm was bleeding, but he didn't stop. "Status?" he asked. The computer spoke. "Shields, 2%. Weapons, 40%. One plasma cannon left. No drones." "Still breathing," he muttered. "Good enough." Through the cracked glass of his cockpit, he saw the Velari ships, trapped, defenseless. He remembered Earth. He remembered standing alone as the galaxy turned its back. Not this time. Not today. Back on the Velari command ship, panic was growing. "Captain, the hunters have changed formation," one crew member called. "They're focusing fire on us, ignoring the other ships." "They know we're the command," Illyra said. Another crew member shouted, "Incoming missiles. 3, no, 5. "Brace," she yelled. The ship shook violently. Lights went out. Flames burst from the back wall. 2 officers were thrown to the floor. "We've lost gravity," someone screamed. Illyra grabbed a handrail. "Seal the breach. Get emergency systems online." But before they could move, a bright flash lit the sky. One of the missiles exploded midair. Then another, and another. "Someone's intercepting the missiles." Wraith had returned. His ship dove through the cloud of smoke like a burning arrow. His plasma cannon lit up and tore through 2 hunter ships with one shot. He launched a counter-missile to intercept the rest. Inside his cockpit, he grit his teeth. "Don't die now, Velari," he growled. "I'm not done with you yet." The computer warned, "Power core unstable." Yeah. On the Velari ship, Illyra's crew stared at the screen. "He's back," someone whispered. Illyra's voice shook slightly. "That ship is on fire. How is he still flying?" "Humans," said her second-in-command. "They don't give up." Wraith opened a direct channel. "This is Wraith to Velari Command. Listen closely." Captain Illyra leaned forward. "Go ahead. I'm sending you coordinates. Aim every working cannon there, even if you can't see anything. Fire when I say. We don't have enough power. You have enough for one shot. Make it count." She hesitated, then nodded. "Send the data." Outside the battlefield, the remaining hunter ships moved in fast. Wraith's ship flew through the middle, dragging fire and smoke behind it, luring them closer, tighter. He flipped switches. His plasma core began to glow. "Plasma overload ready," the computer said. He smiled bitterly. "Let's cook." Inside the Velari ship, targeting systems locked on. Captain Illyra gave the order. "All cannons, stand by." On her screen, she saw Wraith's ship fly directly into the middle of the hunters. And stop. "Why did he stop?" someone asked. "Because," Illyra realized, eyes wide. "He wants them to surround him." Wraith's cockpit glowed bright red. The heat was rising. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The computer screamed, "Plasma detonation in 10 seconds." Wraith opened the channel one last time. "Velari now," Captain Illyra shouted. "Fire all cannons. Now." Fire filled the void. The Velari ships fired everything they had into the empty space Wraith had marked. Their shots hit nothing. At first. Then Wraith triggered the core. His ship exploded in a controlled burst of plasma energy. A giant wave of fire spread out like a sunburst. Hunter ships caught in the blast were instantly destroyed. ripped apart by heat and shock. The Valari's cannon fire hit the wave at the same moment, doubling the force. In a single moment, 8 hunter ships were gone. Silence returned. The battlefield floated quiet again. Debris and bodies drifted in space. Captain Elera stared at the screen. "It's he. Alive?" someone asked. They searched the screens. Nothing. No signal. A crew member said softly, "No escape pod." Elera looked down, her fists clenched. She didn't cry, but she wanted to. Then, "Captain," someone shouted. "New signal. Small object, floating in the debris." They zoomed in. A pod. A human escape pod. Inside, Wraith lay unconscious, blood on his face. His ship was gone, but he was alive. The Valari command ship was barely holding together. Sparks flew from the walls. Fires burned in the lower decks. Every second, the lights flickered as systems failed one by one. The crew ran from console to console, trying to keep the ship alive. Captain Elera stood in the center of the bridge. Her face was tired, her arms scratched and bruised. But her eyes were sharp, focused. "How many ships left?" she asked. A crew member turned, voice shaking. "3, Captain. Ours, and 2 scouts. Both damaged." Elera's jaw tightened. "Weapons?" "Minimal. We can't even power the main cannon." She looked at the large view screen. Out there, the hunter ships were moving again. Dozens of black, sharp vessels circling like vultures. They had paused after the humans' attack, but only for a moment. Now they were adapting. The hunters always adapted. "They're coming," she whispered. In the medical bay, a young Valari officer lay on a bed, his arm wrapped in cloth. A nurse wiped blood from his face. "Are we going to die?" he asked softly. The nurse didn't answer. Outside, a low rumble shook the floor. Another explosion. The boy closed his eyes and whispered, "I don't want to die in the dark." Back on the bridge, alarms screamed. Multiple hunter signatures approaching. A technician shouted, "20 at least." "They're targeting the life support systems," said another. "They want to end it fast," Elera said. "Smart." She turned to her crew. Some were too young for war. Some were already injured. All were ready. "Prepare to fight," she said. "But Captain," someone said, "we barely have weapons." "We fight anyway." Elera snapped. "We don't surrender. We hold this ship until the last breath." Silence followed. Then a quiet, "Yes, Captain." The Valari stood up, one by one, and moved to their posts. In deep space, the hunters closed in. Their ships moved without sound, without hesitation. Then one of them stopped. A flash of red light, then a loud explosion. One hunter ship turned into fire. Then another. And another. "Human ship re-engaging," shouted a Valari officer. Captain Elera rushed to the screen. "Where is he?" The screen zoomed in. There, like a shadow in the stars, Wraith's ship moved fast between the hunters. He was no longer just attacking from far. He was in the middle of them now, firing from all sides. Missiles, laser bursts, kinetic rounds. One human, one ship, fighting 20 enemies. Inside Wraith's ship, the man didn't speak. His eyes moved fast, reading data. His hands danced across controls. "Power core at 60%. The computer warned. "Enough," Wraith said. He launched 2 decoy drones and spun the ship. The hunters chased the wrong targets. He slipped behind them and unleashed a heavy plasma blast. 3 hunters exploded instantly. But then, something new happened. One of the hunter ships did not attack. It scanned Wraith's ship. The computer beeped. "Hunter AI is adapting to human tactics." "They're learning again," Wraith muttered. "Good." He pushed the engines to full speed and dove back into the fight. On the Valari bridge, Captain Elera could hardly believe her eyes. He's buying us time, she said. One of the engineers turned. Captain, I might have a way to power the main cannon again, but it will burn our engines. If we lose engines, we can't escape. If we don't fire, we won't live. Illyra paused, then nodded. Do it. Down in engineering, Velari workers rushed to redirect power. The lights dimmed. The hum of the engines grew louder, higher, more unstable. Main cannon charging, someone called over the comms. Outside, Wraith was hit. A hunter ship finally clipped his wing. His ship spun, flames trailing behind. Inside, Wraith grunted as sparks flew. Shields down to 15%, the computer said. Suggest retreat. No retreat, he growled. Not yet. Back on the Velari ship, the cannon was ready. Target the largest hunter ship, Illyra ordered. The cannon fired. A beam of blue-white light ripped through space and hit the hunter command ship, tearing it in two. The explosion knocked other hunters off course. For a moment, the battlefield went quiet. Then Wraith's voice came through their comms. That was new, he said. Good shot. Captain Illyra smiled for the first time in hours. You're not too bad yourself, human. But the quiet didn't last. The remaining hunters regrouped, faster this time, more aggressive. And now, they were angry. They must be stopped. The hunter leader growled. Prepare the final weapon. His officers scrambled to comply, sending orders to activate a hidden weapon, a device capable of destroying entire fleets with a single blast. The countdown began. Back on the Velari command ship, Illyra watched the scene unfold. The incoming fire from the hunters was relentless, and their flagship was preparing something terrifying. We can't keep this up much longer, Rith said urgently, his voice tight with fear. Their final weapon is charging. Illyra's heart sank. She looked at Wraith. Do we have a chance to stop it? Wraith nodded slowly, but his face was grim. We have one shot, but it's risky. Do it, Illyra ordered. Wraith moved quickly, his hands flying over the console. He sent a message to the human fleet. We need to intercept their weapon before it fires. It's our only chance. On the human flagship, Captain Danvers listened intently. Understood. We've got your back. Wraith. The human ships moved into position, flying toward the heart of the hunter fleet, directly in the path of the hunter leader's flagship. The tension in the air was thick. Wraith watched the countdown on the screen, ticking down to the final moments. 5 seconds, Wraith muttered. We need to time this perfectly. The final weapon on the hunter flagship powered up. A massive energy beam began to gather in the heart of the ship, glowing bright with destructive power. 1 second, Wraith whispered. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the human fleet launched a coordinated strike. They fired everything they had, their weapons lighting up the darkness like a storm of fire. At the same time, Wraith initiated the Velari's final countermeasure, a full damage pulse that would disable all hunter technology in a wide radius. The two attacks collided in space, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then the explosion came. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. A blinding light filled the sky, followed by a shockwave that rippled through space. The hunter flagship was caught in the blast, the energy beam failing to fire as their ship shattered into pieces. Direct hit, one of the human officers shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. The hunter fleet faltered, their ships now without command and without direction. The damage had been done. On the Velari command ship, Illyra and Wraith stared at the screen, wide-eyed. The once unbeatable hunter fleet was crumbling, their ships floating aimlessly, destroyed and disabled. We did it, Illyra whispered. We did, Wraith replied. But it's not over yet. The remaining hunter ships were still a threat. Though their command was lost, they continued to fight. But now, the human and Velari fleets moved with the determination of a united force. The hunters had underestimated the strength of those they had tried to destroy. One by one, the hunter ships were picked off. The remaining hunter commanders, realizing their defeat, began to retreat. But it was too late. Hours later, the final battle was over. The hunters had been driven out of the galaxy. The Velari homeworld had been saved. Captain Elira stood on the bridge, looking out at the peaceful view of their planet. The stars were no longer filled with the threat of destruction. The galaxy was free again, but it had been forever changed. Wraith stood beside her, his expression calm but thoughtful. "It's over," he said softly. "For now." Elira nodded. "For now." As the Velari and human fleets began to regroup, there was a quiet sense of triumph. They had won. The galaxy had been saved, not by one species or the other, but by the strength of their alliance. The survivors, once divided, were now united by their shared fight. Elira turned to Wraith. "I can't thank you enough for what you did." Wraith gave a small, weary smile. "I didn't do it alone." "No," Elira agreed. "None of us did." Wraith looked up at the stars, his mind already turning to the future. "There's still a lot of work to be done. The galaxy's scars will take time to heal. But we have time," Elira said, her voice filled with hope. "And we're not alone anymore." Wraith nodded, a slight but genuine smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "No, we're not alone." The galaxy was free. The fight was over, but the story of those who had survived would echo through the stars for generations to come. The end. "Isn't that a little late for that?" Wraith asked, his voice still calm, but tinged with bitterness. "The hunters will keep coming. They'll never stop." "They will if we stand together," Elira replied firmly. Wraith finally turned to look at her. "You really believe that, don't you?" Elira met his gaze. "I do. And we're not alone anymore. You helped us, Wraith. We've learned what it means to fight. We've learned how to survive." He stared at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "I've seen people lose their hope before. It's a hard thing to get back. But if you say so, I'll follow." "Good," Elira said with a small smile. "Then we're not finished yet. Not by a long shot." Meanwhile, far away, in the shadows of space, the hunter fleet gathered once more. Their silent, mechanical ships moved in perfect formation, their AI systems calculating their next move. They had failed, but they would return. And this time, they would finish what they started. The Velari homeworld loomed ahead, a planet of blue oceans, vast green lands, and shining cities. It had been the cradle of their civilization, the heart of everything they had once known. But now, it was a symbol of everything they had lost. Captain Elira stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the planet below. The massive fleet of surviving Velari ships gathered around the homeworld, floating in silence. They had arrived, but they were not safe. Not yet. "We've been given a chance," Elira said, her voice low, almost to herself. "But we have to act quickly." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Rith, nodded grimly. "The hunters will come. They will come for us all, now that they know we are gathered here." Elira's eyes hardened. "Then we'll show them what happens when you push a species too far." In the command center, the room was filled with tense energy. Crew members worked furiously, analyzing data, prepping weapons, and planning defense strategies. Even Wraith, though still recovering from his injuries, was at the center of it all, helping with tactics and coordination. Elira walked over to him. "How are you feeling?" Wraith looked up at her, eyes sharp despite his injuries. "Better, but don't expect me to sit this one out. I didn't survive just to hide behind walls." "You're still weak," Elira warned, her voice softer now. "We need you at full strength." "I'll be fine," he said firmly. "We don't have time to waste." Out in space, the hunters were already moving. From the shadows of the galaxy, their fleet had begun its journey toward the Velari homeworld. Silent, deadly, and relentless. Their ships moved as one, calculating, adapting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. On their flagship, the hunter leader stood before the large glowing map of the galaxy. His eyes narrowed as he watched the growing cluster of ships around the Velari world. "They think they're safe," he growled, his voice cold. "But we know better. It ends here." Back on the Velari fleet, the final preparations were underway. The fleet was ready. But as they gathered, there was something different in the air, a sense of resolve that had never existed before. The Velari had always been a peaceful people, but now they were becoming something else. Something stronger. Wraith stood on the command deck, watching the chaos unfold. "They're coming," he said, his voice calm despite the rising tension. Illyra stepped forward, taking her place beside him. "Let them come. We'll be ready. We don't just fight to survive anymore," Wraith continued, his tone hard. "We fight to win. For everyone who has fallen. For everyone who still has a chance." Illyra nodded. "For Earth. For all of us." Hours later, the hunter fleet arrived. They appeared as if from nowhere, hundreds of ships emerging from the darkness. The sky was filled with their deadly form, like a swarm of locusts descending to finish what they had started. "They're here," Wraith reported, his voice tight. Illyra turned to her crew. "All ships, prepare for battle. We fight with everything we have." The Velari fleet responded, weapons charging, shields activating. The tension was palpable as the two fleets drew closer. "All fighters, launch," Illyra ordered. The stars were silent. In the cold dark of deep space, nothing moved, except the broken remains of a once proud alien fleet. The Velari ships floated like dead birds. Smoke leaked from shattered hulls. Fires blinked behind cracked viewports. Only a few ships still had power, and even those were barely holding together. Inside the command ship, Captain Illyra gripped the edge of the console. Her green skin was burned, her silver uniform stained with blood and oil. Her second-in-command lay unconscious nearby. The lights flickered as the ship shuddered again. Another blast. The hunter ships were still out there, circling like predators around dying prey. They were machines, built for war. They never spoke, never paused. They hunted, destroyed, and moved on. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how to stop them. Illyra had led her people to this system for safety. She was wrong. "Captain," a young crew member said, barely able to stand, "we lost shields. The engine is failing." "How many ships remain?" she asked, her voice rough. 6, maybe 5. The others, they're gone." Captain Illyra closed her eyes. So many dead. So many lost. They had sent signals for help, but no one had answered. No one ever answered. "Send it again," she said. The crew member hesitated. "Captain, we've already sent it. 1,000 times." "Send it again." Outside, the last signal burst into space. A message of pain, fear, and hope. A simple call. "This is the Velari. We are under attack. Please help. Anyone. Please." Far away, on the edge of the galaxy, hidden behind a cold moon, a small human ship floated in silence. It had no lights, no signals. It looked dead, forgotten. But inside, a man sat awake. He was tall, broad, with short black hair and a face full of scars. He wore no uniform, only a black jacket and gloves. He sat in the cockpit, listening to the void. The signal reached him. He muttered, playing it again. The voice of the Velari captain filled the room. The fear in her voice. The sound of battle behind her. He stared at the screen. Her face looked tired, desperate. He didn't move for a while. On the wall behind him, old medals hung beside a faded human flag. Dust covered them. "I thought you were all gone," he whispered. The computer blinked. "Signal repeats. Do you want to respond?" The man shook his head. "Not yet." He stood and walked to the back of the ship. Inside the shadows, weapons were stored, some too powerful, too illegal, too forgotten. He checked one. Still working. His name was once spoken with fear and respect. Now he was only a ghost. His call sign, Wraith. The galaxy had turned its back on humans long ago. They didn't want help. They didn't want warnings. And now, they were dying. Back at the battle zone, Captain Elira watched the hunter ships getting closer. They had stopped firing. Now, they circled like wolves, waiting for the last breath. "We're out of time," she said. The crew nodded. "Should we destroy the ship ourselves?" Someone asked. "So they don't take us." Elira looked at them. Brave, scared, ready to die. "No," she said. "We hold. Until the end." Suddenly, a new sound filled the air. The computer blinked red. "Unknown ship detected," a crew member shouted. Small, fast, human design. Everyone stared. Human. Elira's voice cracked. Then, a bright light flashed outside. One of the hunter ships exploded, cut clean in half. What was that? Long-range kinetic shot. From the human ship. Another blast. A second hunter ship turned to ash. The command deck went silent. A small human ship alone was tearing through the hunter fleet with deadly precision. Captain Elira stepped forward. "Get me visuals." On the screen, the human ship moved like a shadow, fast, silent, deadly. It vanished and reappeared, firing shots that pierced hunter armor like paper. "Who is he?" Someone whispered. Captain Elira watched, eyes wide. "I don't know," she said softly. "But I think he's our last chance." The cockpit was dark except for one blinking light. Wraith sat in silence, watching the battle replay on his screen. His face was still, his eyes cold. Outside, space stretched wide and quiet. But behind his eyes, war was still burning. The Velari signal repeated again. "This is the Velari. We are under attack. Please help. Anyone. Please." He had heard it 100 times now. Each time, he wanted to ignore it. But he didn't. He couldn't. Wraith stood and walked to a small panel. He opened it, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside were pictures, old and torn. One showed him with a group of smiling humans in uniform. Another showed a young alien child, laughing, holding a flower. That child was dead now. So were the humans. He remembered the day the galaxy turned its back on Earth. Years ago, humanity had warned them. Wraith stood in the Great Galactic Council, shouting into silence. "The hunters are not just machines," he said. "They're learning, evolving. They don't stop. We must act now, together." But the council laughed. The Velari ambassador had said gently, "Your human fear makes you imagine monsters. We have things under control." A week later, the first colony was gone. Then another. By the time they begged for help, Earth was already burning. Back to now. Wraith snapped the compartment shut. He moved to the control chair. His fingers danced over the console. Engines roared to life. Lights blinked on. Weapons armed. "Target locked," the computer said. "Course?" it asked. He stared at the stars. "Take me to the swarm." On the Velari ship, Captain Elira watched the strange human vessel move like a ghost. It fired without warning, then vanished into the dark. The hunter ships tried to follow, but failed. He was too fast, too smart. "Send a message," Elira ordered. "Try to contact him." A young officer nodded. "Sending." They waited. No answer. But then, their screens lit up. Incoming transmission. Audio only. A voice, rough and tired, came through. "Stay behind me. If I fall, run." Elira stood frozen. "Who are you?" she asked. No answer. Just silence. Then another explosion outside. The third hunter ship was gone. Inside Wraith's ship, he ignored the message. No time for words. Only action now. He flew through debris, flipped between hunter lines, and fired deadly precision shots. His ship was old, but full of hidden power. Earth tech, banned and forgotten by most of the galaxy. One hunter locked onto him. Fired. His ship shook. Shields at 70%, the computer warned. Wraith smiled. Still plenty. He flipped the ship around and fired 2 torpedoes. The hunter was gone. Meanwhile, the Velari watched. Some cried. Some prayed. They had never seen anything like it. A single human was holding back a machine army. Captain Elira whispered, "Why would he help us?" Her second-in-command, now awake, replied, "Maybe we're not the enemy." Later, deep inside Wraith's ship, the human stood in front of a sealed door. He placed his hand on the scanner. "Authorization." "Wraith," he said. The door slid open. Inside were crates. Weapons, AI cores, old human tech from the Forbidden Wars. Stuff that could wipe out fleets. He opened one and pulled out a black metal sphere. It glowed red. "Time to change the game," he said. He returned to the cockpit. The ship started changing. Panels slid away. Weapons extended. Engines roared louder. Wraith's ship wasn't just a ship. It was a war beast, a sleeping monster, and now it was awake. Final scene. Hunter ships pulled back, forming a tight circle around the remaining Velari. They thought they had trapped the weak. But now they were being hunted. Wraith's ship tore through their formation like a blade through paper. Inside, the man spoke only once. "You ignored Earth's warnings. You left us to die. You won't do it again." His ship vanished into the stars, silent, fast, and full of fire. In space, the battle erupted. The sky was filled with flashing lights, explosions, and the soundless fury of war. Velari ships fired their weapons, their shots lighting up the void. The hunters retaliated immediately, sending waves of missiles and lasers toward the Velari fleet. Wraith's ship, though still damaged, was in the heart of the battle. He moved with precision, dodging fire, attacking with ruthless efficiency. His plasma cannon fired with deadly accuracy, destroying hunter ships one by one. Inside the command ship, Elira watched as the battle unfolded on the view screen. It was a chaotic, violent dance. Velari ships falling, hunter ships burning. But despite the odds, the Velari were fighting back, holding their ground. "They're not giving up," Elira whispered, her eyes filled with admiration. "They won't," Rith replied. "Not now." On the hunter flagship, the leader watched as the battle raged. He had underestimated the Velari, underestimated their strength. But he wouldn't make that mistake again. He turned to his officers. "Prepare for the final strike. Target the command ship. Once it falls, the rest will follow." The orders were given. The hunter fleet focused its fire on the Velari command ship, launching everything they had. The Velari shields flickered under the assault, and the ship rocked as explosions ripped through the hull. On the bridge, Elira stumbled as the ship shook. "Report," she shouted. "Shields at 30%, her officer called. "We can't hold much longer." Elira gritted her teeth. "We'll hold, for as long as we can." She turned to Wraith, who was already heading for the comms console. "Wraith, what are you?" "Sending a signal," he said, his voice cold. "We need backup, and we need it fast." He tapped a few buttons on the console, sending a signal to every surviving ship in the galaxy, to every ship that had ever fought back against the hunters. "Help is coming," Wraith said, his eyes hard. "They'll hear us. They'll join us." Across the galaxy, a signal was sent. It was a simple message. "We fight. We survive. Join us." The message spread like wildfire. Back on the battlefield, the Velari fleet was holding strong, but they couldn't keep it up forever. Their ships were being destroyed, one by one. Then from the shadows of space, new ships appeared. A new fleet. A fleet of humans. Wraith's message had worked. The hunter leader's eyes widened in disbelief. No, no, this can't be happening. Wraith's voice came over the comms again. We don't just fight to survive anymore. We fight to win. The final battle had arrived. The Velari fleet, battered and scarred, stood side by side with the new force of humanity. Their ships, once lost and broken, now fought as one. A new alliance had been formed, born from the desperation of survival and the hope of victory. Wraith stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The battle was far from over, but something had changed. The tide had shifted. The hunters were no longer invincible. Do you think we can win? Elira asked quietly, standing beside him. Wraith didn't look at her. He kept his gaze on the chaos outside, the fiery explosions lighting up the darkness of space. We will, he said simply. We have to. Outside, the battlefield had become a maelstrom. Velari ships, reinforced by the human fleet, moved in tight formation. They had a single purpose: destroy the hunters and take back the galaxy. The human ships were smaller but agile, equipped with advanced weaponry that outmatched the hunters' calculations. Each shot from a human ship was deadly, tearing through the hunter fleet with precision. On the bridge of a human ship, Captain Danvers gave the orders. All ships, focus fire on their flagship. Let's finish this. The human fleet moved as one, launching a relentless barrage of missiles and energy blasts toward the hunter leader's ship. On the hunter flagship, the leader watched in fury as his ships were torn apart. The Velari had become more than just survivors. They had become a force to be reckoned with. And the humans, they were fighting like warriors who had nothing to lose. The silence in space was overwhelming. The battlefield was now a graveyard. The remnants of hunter ships drifted aimlessly, pieces of them floating like forgotten debris. The Velari fleet had survived. Barely. But at what cost? Inside the Velari command ship, the mood was somber. The crew worked in a quiet, almost robotic fashion. There was no celebration, no joy. They were alive, but their victory had come at a high price. Captain Elira stood in front of the bridge, staring at the stars. Her hands rested on the railing as she thought about the human who had helped them. Wraith. His ship had been destroyed in the final blast. No one expected him to survive. Captain, a voice called from behind her. She turned. It was her second in command. We've found him, he said, his voice still tense. The human. Wraith. He's alive. Elira's eyes widened. Alive? Yes, Captain. We detected his escape pod. It's floating near the edge of the battlefield. It's in bad condition, but it's still intact. We're bringing him aboard. Elira's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she didn't speak. She had never imagined the human would survive. After everything he'd done, the destruction he caused, she expected him to be gone. But he wasn't. Inside the medical bay, Wraith lay on a bed, unconscious but breathing. His face was covered in blood, his clothes torn and burned. A Velari doctor worked carefully to patch him up. The doctor's hands moved quickly, treating the wounds as best as they could. But it was clear the man had been through a lot. Will he survive? Elira asked, standing in the doorway. The doctor looked up, his face grim. We've done what we can, Captain. He's strong, but the injuries are serious. It's hard to say. Elira nodded and stepped into the room. She looked down at Wraith's unconscious form. There was so much she wanted to ask him. So much she needed to know. Hours later, Wraith's eyes fluttered open. He groaned, his body aching as he tried to sit up. The first thing he noticed was the soft hum of the Velari ship. He was no longer in his own ship. He was in a medical bay, surrounded by unfamiliar technology and beings. A familiar face appeared beside him. Captain Elira, Wraith muttered, his voice raspy. Elira leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp. You're awake. Seems like I am, he replied with a weak smile. I guess I owe you another one. Elira remained silent for a moment, studying him. Why did you help us? She finally asked. Wraith's expression softened slightly, his eyes distant. Because someone had to. You didn't deserve to die. No one deserves to be wiped out like that. He paused, wincing as he adjusted his position on the bed. And I couldn't just let you all burn, not again. After Earth, I've seen too much destruction. Too many people left behind. Elira's expression softened, but her voice remained steady. You could have left. We would have died without you, but you could have run. Why didn't you? Wraith's eyes flickered with something close to pain. Because running would have meant the hunters won. And I've seen enough of that. I had nothing left to lose. Elira watched him closely. She could sense the weight of his words, the deep hurt behind them. This was a man who had seen too much death, too many lies. He had no home left, no place to go, and yet he chose to help them. I guess I understand, she said softly. But I don't know how we can ever repay you for what you did. Wraith shrugged weakly. You don't owe me anything. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the chance to make things right. Days passed as Wraith recovered in the Velari Medical Bay. The crew treated him with the same respect they would any injured soldier. Elira checked on him occasionally, but they didn't speak much. Wraith was a man of few words, and Elira had her own burdens to bear. One day, after he was strong enough to walk, Elira approached him in the common room. He was sitting by a window, looking out at the stars. Feeling better? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. He didn't turn to look at her. I'll live. I always do. Elira hesitated. We're heading to the Velari homeworld. We need to regroup. We need to prepare for whatever comes next.